Okay, here we are. It must be Thursday. Thursday on Community Matters, because community does matter. We're talking about the Waianae Coast School Readiness. Get that right?
School Readiness Project.
Project.
Yes.
Okay, with Marsha Robinson, who is the School Readiness Project Coordinator for the, what district is it?
District or organization?
Name of the organization?
Learning Disabilities.
Learning Disabilities Association of Hawaii.
Yes.
Office in Waianae. Thank you for coming down, even
Thank
from
you for
Waianae.
having me, and
Yeah.
thank you to Aloha United Way for having us.
Yes, well, we're here because of them, because you're one of their beneficiaries. And the connection of this show is all about, that's why we call it Aloha United We Stand.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's talk about, learning disabilities first. What is a learning disability in your parlance, that you work with? What is it?
Learning Disabilities Association of Hawaii was established in 1968. And we actually have the Parent Training Information Center that is the primary, one of the primary programs that we have. So under the Individual Disabilities Education Act, there is grants set aside for each state to have what they call a Parent Training Information
Federal
State.
money.
Yes. And so we are the Parent Training Information Center for the state of Hawaii.
So you're going to train parents how to deal with their kids who have learning disabilities?
Yes, sir. And we train professionals as well.
Okay.
So that's one of the programs that we have.
Are you one of the trainers?
I used to be under the Parent Training Information
Now you
Center.
can be the supervisor. And
Yes.
how many people do you supervise who train?
I have actually 5 people under me.
Okay.
4 people under me now. Sorry.
And one other point of clarification, at least for me, is there's a federal statute, a federal program that funds these kinds of organizations like the Learning Disability Association of Hawaii with federal money. What about state money? You get any money from the state of Hawaii?
Not at this time, no, sir.
Do you get any money from the public?
We get money from Aloha United Way, and we do have a membership, so we could get funding from, like if you wanted to donate money to our organization, you can do that.
Okay. Do you get those donations from the
Yes,
public?
we do.
And from Aloha United Way?
Yes.
So Aloha United Way becomes a channel for the money or for a lot of the money that comes from the public.
And we are the original School Readiness Project. So they first funded us in 2009, and we've been consistent up until now. And
with Aloha United Way?
Yes, Aloha United Way. So they primarily are our funders for the program, the School Readiness Program.
Okay, are they funding you more than the federal government is funding you?
Well, for our program, they are our primary funders. The Parent and Training Information Center, that's a separate program funded by federal money.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
All right, so somebody thought in 1968, well, if 1968 was the year that the federal program was established, is that it?
I'm not 100% sure on
Spawned,
that.
sounds
Yeah.
like that spawned this whole thing. And you want to teach parents, because parents don't really know how to handle. We spoke, I told you, we spoke with Dwayne Yee
Right, from
last
Variety
week
School.
from Variety School. And, Variety School is learning disabilities of one kind or another.
Right.
And he called it a spectrum, and it certainly is a spectrum, from fairly mild problems to fairly serious problems, all getting in the way of learning.
Right.
And all make it difficult for the child to learn in a regular school setting, and making it difficult for the parents. I mean, the parents really suffer over this. They think their child is defective, and there must be all kinds of psychology around that.
Right.
So when you train a parent, what are you trying to teach that parent?
From our program, what we're trying to teach them is developmental milestones and how their child's health should be healthy, that child. And
what kinds of problems are you trying to help them deal with?
well, we actually use a bunch of different screening tools. One of our screening tools is the Ages Stages Questionnaire, which is referred to as the ASQ3 or ASQ-SE, which is
ASQ,
social.
I don't know what that is.
That's Ages Stages Questionnaire. So if you're ever here,
Ages Stages
questionnaire.
So whether you're up to your age in a certain skill or cognition.
Yes, so it goes all the way up to age 5, 60 months.
And we'll see whether the kid is up to the proper level for his age.
Right, so it divides up the different domains like communication, gross motor, fine motor, problem solving.
This
And
isn't a written test. Somebody has to be with him.
yes, well, it is actually a parent questionnaire. So Easter Seals actually has it online, but it's preferred to be in their natural environment. The parent needs to be part of the questionnaire because the parent knows the child the best.
Sure.
So, and it's at a fourth grade reading level, and there's different areas that it's scored in. So there's the white area, which is, you know, they're doing their own target. There's the gray area that's more of a concern and an opportunity to be able to teach the parent. For instance, maybe they don't know their shapes, so we have to introduce them, you know, parents to start, you know, helping them trace shapes and learn their circles, their squares, so forth like that. And then there's the black area, which is 2 standard deviations below the mean, which means there's a concern, and it should go over to either early intervention services with the Department of Health if the child is 0 to 3, and if the child's 3 and above, which, you know, goes all the way up to age 21 with the Department of Education, but special ed is, you know, 3 to 5. We would refer them to Department of Education because they need to get a full comprehensive evaluation. So our tool is just a screening tool.
Okay.
So we hope to be able to detect if there's any delays and get those child services through early intervention, so they're ready for kindergarten when they enter kindergarten.
So that's your mission.
Yes.
When you say the school readiness program, you mean trying to make these young kids who aren't in school at all yet ready for school, ready for kindergarten when they get to be
Right.
kindergarten age.
So that is our goal, to be able to increase the percentage of kids when they enter kindergarten, they're ready to learn. And our measures are by the Hawaii State Readiness measurements.
Okay, which is what part of the health or
Department of Education.
Education?
Yeah, they have the
So when they come
statewide.
into kindergarten, they got to have certain ability, for example, to discern shapes would be one thing. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, wow. So we'll get to kindergarten in a minute first. When does this kind of problem first present itself in the development of a child that's on that spectrum?
It really depends. You know, our target age is 2 to 5, but it can go when the child is born. If that's a preemie, more than likely they're going to have some kind of developmental delays. So hopefully they get into the early intervention services with Department of Health in early on if they are preemie and stuff. However, we hope to be able to catch the kids between the ages 2 and 5.
How do you catch them? You walk around the neighborhood?
Well, we actually provide a lot of different opportunities. We have a school readiness event coming up on June 17th.
Let's talk
which
about
is a
that's coming
Wednesday.
soon. That's in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So now this is an event which is to attract parents, I suppose, and
Right.
children. And at that event, you're going to give them tests. You're going to
Right, we will be offering our developmental, which is the ages stages questionnaire. We'll be also doing hearing, vision, and we also do an MChat, which is a screening tool for, the age range is a little different. It's 15 months to 30 months, but it hopes to be able to screen children that are at risk for autism.
So this is it's really interesting. So a parent then gets this and says to himself, well, let's see, there are certain indications in our family life at home suggest to me that maybe I have some autism in my child.
Right.
Or some other, we should talk about all the possible impediments. But you know, I suspect there's something, so I'm going to come down and see Marsha Robinson.
Right.
And I'm going to have some age stage tests, and then I'll if I find that they think they can help me and they will help me, then I will submit to the system, and then I'll have a few years of whatever care, treatment, whatever you offer, right? You are offering it.
Well, we don't actually offer
Who offers this? Health
services.
and-
Right, so if the child is at risk for a developmental delay, we refer them first through their pediatrician, then depending on their age, they would go to the Department of Health Early Intervention Services, which they come into the house and provide if they needed speech or whatever service it
that's
is
free.
they need. And it's all free, even our services are free. And if they're 3 and above, they would go over to the Department of Education, because they would have to go under a full evaluation with the Department of Education
The
as well.
pediatrician costs money, though.
What do you mean? The
If
pediatrician?
I take my kid to the pediatrician because there was something in the age stage thing that suggested that there
Okay.
was autism in the person, then how do I get services from a pediatrician? And
Well, they would have to actually write the letter and do further testing for autism as well.
Okay.
But the services would actually come from the Department of Education or Department of Health, depending on the age range. And that's all under the Individual Disabilities Education Act.
Okay, oh,
If they
so I don't
qualify.
have to pay for the pediatrician?
Right, well, you might have a copay.
Okay.
So
But
that
even
might.
if I don't have insurance, I mean, now.
Well, if you don't have insurance, we can help you get insurance as well. There's different options out there where we can help with that as
Okay, now
well.
what I'm getting on this, Marsha, is that this is in Waianae.
Yes, it is.
And back in '68, it would have been pretty much the same thing in Waianae.
Right,
There's a lot of families and kids that need this help out there.
right.
If I lived in Kahala, I wouldn't have this problem.
Well, you might still have the problem, and one good thing, and thank you to Aloha United Way, we have went island-wide with our screening project. So we also have a mobile screening unit, which I think I sent you the picture, but it's, I don't see it up. But anyway, it's about the size of a handy van, and we'll go along the coastline, at different events we might be at, but we're trying to attract kids and parents so they can get their children screened, and it's all free. So we do the developmental, the hearing, the vision, right there on the bus.
How do you avoid scaring them off? You know, I can see a parent doesn't want to deal with this, you know, sort of denial, if you will. How do you get past that?
A lot of times what I've noticed since I've been out there in Waianae now, like a year and a half, the parents are okay with the screening. I mean, I'm not sure. They really are more in the denial when there's an issue or concern for their child.
When the screening comes back positive, yeah.
Right, and so I do have a lot of parents that will sit down with me. Actually, I just sat down with one the beginning of the week, and she had concerns. The child was all in the black area, which, you know, that means they do need to be referred to the Department of Education. However, just going to the Department of Education was a scary thought for her, and she was very concerned because there is a stigma out there what special ed looked like in 1968. You went to this school over on the other side of the island that normal kids don't go to, but that's not how special ed is now.
We don't do that now. They go
Right.
to the regular school.
They go to a regular school. A lot of the kids with what they call individual education plans, they're in the regular classroom and the resource teachers and come to them.
Is that the best way?
It is the best way.
Wouldn't you want specialists to deal with this?
But they need
it's
to
a
be
pros
around their
and con-
peers.
I
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
You don't want to segregate them.
Yeah,
It's a
no.
bad idea.
No, that's
Yeah.
true. That is a bad idea.
Yeah, okay. The other thing is, suppose the kid, you know, gets past the screening. What I mean is, he's not screened, or the screening doesn't catch some problem.
Right.
Now he's in kindergarten, a kindergarten teacher, DOE school, nothing fancy there. She begins to see problems. Does she come to you? Are you part of that process?
No, at that time, she would actually speak to the parent and look at trying to get that child provided a full comprehensive evaluation through the Department of Education.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be responsible after that.
There's definitely an overlap with what Variety School is doing.
Yes.
That's why, I mean, in the case of Variety School, it costs plenty of money.
Yes,
Like
that's true.
$20,000 a semester or a year. I can't remember which one. That's a lot of
Right.
money. And I don't know what their level of results are, but let's assume they don't have the money, but they are found, say, in kindergarten to have a problem. Does DOE take care of that? Is it?
DOE would be responsible. It is the parent's choice in the end if they want to accept special ed, but it is a placement decision by the IEP team where this child would go. If they would go to Variety School, that has to be an IEP decision.
What does that stand for?
Individual education plan, sorry. I did.
I'm trying to get you out of that world.
I know, and I did say earlier individual education plan, but then it goes right back
Sure.
to my hat, so.
We're going to take a short break.
Okay.
I'm going to write some of these acronyms down. We'll come back, and I want to get back to a point that we talked about before, is exactly what is on the spectrum, you know, from a psychological point of view. And what are the impediments that we are dealing with here? It must be more than just autism, but any learning disabilities. What are they? Okay, that's Marsha Robinson. She's the School Readiness Project Coordinator in the Learning Disabilities Association of Hawaii, which has its office in Waianae. We're talking about Waianae Coast School Readiness Project here on Community Matters, because community matters. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen, I host Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii, and I do this because I care about science literacy in Hawaii. I want to spread the understanding that science is a vital and interesting part of everyone's life. I want to make sure the broadest possible spectrum of people understand the beauty and the value of science and realize that science plays out each and every day of their lives. I want you to understand that science is fun. So we bring onto this show each week guests who are scientists, from astronomers to zoologists, and we talk about what they do and how they do it. But most importantly, we talk about why you should care about their work, why you should see that their work has value and impact on your life. So I hope you'll join us Fridays, 1 p.m. here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You can watch us via live stream. You can watch us recorded on Olelo, and you can see us each week. We hope you'll join us.
We're back, we're live, we're here with Marsha Robinson, having a lovely Thursday afternoon. Thanks for coming down, Marsha.
Thank you.
So educational. You know, my feeling about this is we all have to know what goes on here. We have to know about organizations like yours. We have to know what Aloha United Way is funding, and all the state programs around. We have to know about the social safety net. We all have to know about that. We can't just assume that somebody else is doing it somewhere else, and we don't have to care about it. We have to care about it. Yeah. And we have to know you. We want to meet you. We want to know what you do, how you think, you know, what kind of special discipline you have, kind of, you know, professional life you have. So let me ask that first, and then we'll get to the arc, the spectrum.
Okay.
So how did you get into this work?
How did I get into this work? Actually, Ivy Sinclair, I don't know if you know who she is or not, but she actually was one of the founders of Learning Disabilities Association of Hawaii, and she worked with the Children's Community Council in the Department of Education. And I actually have a child that's, gosh, she's almost 30 now, but she had
You
traumatic,
have a child that's
yes,
30?
yes, traumatic,
Okay.
traumatic brain injury, and
In an accident? Sometime?
yes, it was an auto accident, almost killed her when she was 3. So unfortunately, but she was, thanks to Ivy Lee, she helped me through a lot of the Hawaii DOE stuff when I got here. So that was really how I met Ivy Lee, and then I worked for the Department of the Army at the time. I actually was the Family Advocacy Education Program Coordinator for them. And so when that contract ended, she introduced me, and I sort of already knew Learning Disabilities Association before, but there was a job opening, and I applied, and I was a parent consultant for, I guess, about seven years. And then this position came available, and so I jumped over the fence.
How long have you been doing it?
The School Readiness Project, I've been in that program for 1.5 years.
Okay, and the Disability Association?
I've been there almost 8 years.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So it's a career.
Yes, it is. I love education, so that's one of my fondest memories was with the Family Advocacy Program. So that actually gave me my step into education and stuff. Before that, I worked in a hospital in the mental health field. So.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about that, because it's all kind of related to mental health. There's mental health for kids.
Yes.
Not the same as mental health for adults. So, okay, so let's talk about the spectrum. What kinds of things are we, you know, first of all, autism, you mentioned that, so I assume that's a really important one. That's what you're screening for very often.
Well, just with the MCHAT. The MCHAT screens for the autism.
Okay.
So
what is autism?
Autism is one of the disabilities. It affects a lot of children. It affects how they socially interact with children. There's a wide variety, spectrum, I guess you could say, not variety, but a spectrum from autism where they're low functioning. They have intellectual disabilities, so there's a combination of stuff going on. And then they could also be more in what used to be the term Asperger's, but now it's one spectrum, autism. And those children are highly intelligent. They just don't have the social ability to interact like you and I would. So.
Okay.
And they can have sensory issues as well. What I mean by sensory issues.
Oh, sensory.
Right, so they don't know how to self-regulate themselves. So if you ever seen a kid just maybe flapping their hands, if they're around maybe loud noise that's going off like a fire alarm, they don't know how to self-regulate. And a lot of times they have communication issues such as expressive, receptive language disabilities as well.
So if I met an
It's one of the
autistic kid,
growing-
I'd know immediately that he was an autistic kid.
Not necessarily. It just really depends what their display in. You can't just look at them. They look normal, but it's the way they interact with the public and maybe the way they interact socially, you know, with the hand flapping and stuff like that, because they don't know how to self-regulate themselves. So you wouldn't necessarily look at a child and be able to tell they're autistic.
If I saw a kid flapping his hands, would I make that assumption?
Some people might, but
Yeah.
it's still,
It isn't necessarily so. Yeah.
right, that's exactly right.
Okay, so now you said something before that suggested that autistic kids can be smart and they can
Yes.
learn well.
Right.
It's just they have that kind of autism
More
has social.
barriers.
But some autistic kids have really a lot of trouble in terms
Right,
of
they have-
learning, I mean.
Yes,
yeah.
that's true. Some of them are on the lower end of the autism spectrum, and they have intellectual disabilities and a number of things going on.
Yeah. So what I'm getting here is that when a kid gets into kindergarten, he can be smart and he can learn whatever the teacher's teaching, but he's going to have trouble getting along with the other kids and responding to the teacher because of his social issues.
Right,
And some of them will have.
if they have autism, yes.
If they have autism.
Yes.
Okay, so that's
That could
one
be
of the
some of the
reasons we want to, what's the word, make him ready, make her ready for kindergarten.
Right.
So just looking at autism all by itself, how do you do that? How do you fix it so now the kid is ready for kindergarten?
With the interventions that help, especially knowing what their sensory needs are, because you can't punish a child for those kind of issues,
Well, it's not
because
gonna
it's
help
not going to
at
work.
all.
It's
Yeah,
not going to work.
yeah,
That's how
yeah.
they regulate themselves. So, you know, it's a lot of education out there for that. But that's just one of the things that we
But let's
screen
pursue
for.
that track though. So
Okay.
somebody's coming in, this person is going to be an autism a treatment person. Now, what kind of treatment is it? Do I sit with the child?
It
And-
depends on what that child's needs are. That's why the full comprehensive evaluation is so important, for them to take a full look at what's going on with that
So
child.
different things going on, different kinds
Right.
of treatment. I mean, we're talking about a
Because no one can-
psychologist, a psychiatrist? Are we talking about a
depends.
teacher?
It really depends. So there's different tests that they can do. When you're looking at a full comprehensive, you're looking at cognitive, academic, you're looking at occupation therapy.
The whole child.
Right, fine motor. You really have to look at the whole child. You don't want to have a cookie cut plan.
Because you miss something.
Right, you can miss something.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the parents just aren't educated on knowing sensory is really an occupational therapist that would do a sensory profile on the child. So sometimes they're talking to the teacher about these sensory issues, but they don't know the correct language to use to be able to get the correct evaluation for the child.
Get resistance from the parents when you do intervention?
What do you mean by intervention? You mean like with,
Whatever it
Department of
takes,
Ed.
yeah. I don't mean intervention, I mean treatment.
well, not really, I don't think.
They go along.
I think right now in the age frame that we're looking at, 2 to 5, I find more parents just in denial, because I think they still want to hope that their child's going to be normal.
They want to think you're wrong.
Right,
That
so
all your
there's
screening
denial.
stuff is wrong, and if the kid is just allowed to develop, he'll be fine, right?
Sometimes, I mean, but usually they're just in denial, and they won't hope that if they try all this stuff, or all these, activities that we suggest to help them maybe increase their fine motor, whatever is going on with the child, there's different areas, they still want that child to be normal. They're hoping that that's what's going to happen. So, because what happens under ID, the Individual Disabilities Education Act,
Oh, that.
is with the Department of Education, they have 14 different eligibility criterias. So a lot of times, those children that are 3 to 5 in preschool, they're identified under developmental delay. Even if they have autism, they don't have to be labeled, you know what I'm saying? And you don't even have to have a diagnosis of autism to be under that criteria.
Yeah.
Because there's 14 different criterias.
Of autism.
No, of disabilities that a child
Oh,
could
okay.
be
Okay,
identified.
That's what I was gonna get
Yes.
at, yeah.
There's
One of them would be the traumatic brain injury kind of
Yes.
disability you're talking about.
right, traumatic
your own
brain
case,
injury,
yeah.
yes, and there's other health impairment. But I feel like I'm getting into another segment that you're gonna have soon, which will be the Parent Training Information Center with Rosie Rowe. But we cross over, because we're trying to have early identification. And then we can hand them over to the Parent Training Information Center if they need help getting into the Department of Education or Department of Health, because they service children 0 to 26.
Yes, I am. Yes,
It's okay.
I was thinking the same thought as you were saying it.
Yeah, that's why I have to go back. I go, okay, we're going back over here to
But
my.
when you're talking about this treatment, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Talk about this treatment. The parents are doing a lot of this treatment themselves. You train the parents, or the Parent Training Center
Right.
trains the parents to treat,
But they don't really,
What are they
Parent
doing? What are they
Training
doing with
Information
the
Center is
children?
training the parents on what autism looks like, or maybe what attention deficit looks like, but they're not giving treatment for the parent or for the child.
Who sits with the child and tries to explain about, say, motor problems? Who sits with the child and tries to help the child not flap his hands?
That would be normally, it could be a couple different people, because you have what you would have your special ed teacher or the regular ed teacher that would also be trained either by the occupational therapy, if we're looking at sensory issue. They would come in and train everybody on how to deal with that, because you have to give the child maybe a ball to set on to help self-regulate themselves. There's different, it just depends on that child.
So it's like a whole different regimen
Yes,
for each child. Each child, am I right, on his own
Yes.
merits?
yes.
And so you may find lots of different regimens out there
Mm-hmm.
for every combination of problems. Yeah.
Right. So like I said, our target age is 2 to 5. So we're just really trying to identify if they do have a mild developmental delay or a hearing loss or vision. And then we try to get them to their pediatrician and to the right intervention if it's Department of Health or Department of Education. Because they're the ones who provide the treatment and the service. We're all about screening, getting them identified, and hopefully increase that percentage.
Screening is important.
Yes.
Because why?
Because you can detect if there's going to be
You can
a
help
delay. Yes, and we can help them before the issue becomes a real big issue.
Yeah, and it would become a big issue if they wound up in a public school in say, the kindergarten, and it was obstructing them at that time.
Right.
And then they'd have trouble in school.
Right, and so some children, even when we identify them in an area, say if it's just fine motor and they're in the gray area. So the gray area wouldn't necessarily mean that they have a referral to go into the Department of Education or Department of Health. So with the Ages Stages questionnaire, if they fall in the gray area, it's a teaching opportunity for both the parent and the child. So they would be able to enhance that fine motor skill and be able to hold a pencil when they enter kindergarten, so they can be able to write and read.
Okay, so back to my earlier question. So I know now that there's two kinds. One is I forgot now the name of the one we were talking about, the diagnosis we were talking about.
Oh, autism.
Autism.
Just
okay,
one.
and the
That's
other
just
one
one.
is brain injury.
Oh,
or something.
traumatic brain injury.
Traumatic. Okay, what else?
Oh gosh, you have dyslexia, you have attention deficit disorder that's really out there. You have intellectual disability, which used to be more of the mental retardation, but they changed the terminology to be more friendlier. There's emotional behavior issues as well.
Just psychology, psychiatry.
Yeah, most of the time that's where that ends up going.
So you'll be able to distinguish one of these, or a combination of these from the other, through the screening. You will know.
From our, there is some, with our screenings, we can see, because we do have problem solving, and the social emotional does deal with the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
However, we don't have too many mental health services out there for children that are that young. So that's one of the downfalls to that one.
I want to ask you about how that evolves, after the child is a small child. We'll be right back after this break.
Okay.
Marsha Robinson here on Community Matters in the Waianae Coast School Readiness Project. We'll be right back.
This is Alice Lee Hagan, host of ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show here at ThinkTech Hawaii is every Thursday from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. I bring in interesting guests from Hawaii, the mainland, and hopefully international guests in the future. Do join us on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. Aloha.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevelin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday.
That full competency evaluation, they look at.
Okay, I'm sorry, but you missed the break. We had good discussion on the break. Help clarify for me where this goes. So I made a little list: autism, injury, brain injury, dyslexia, learning disabilities, and emotional problems. And maybe there are others too. And you're not able to identify everything on that list or give us a kind of a report on each one of those, the presence of anyone or each one of those problems. But ultimately, those kids will be screened for all those problems?
The ages stages questionnaire is actually divided into domains like communication, fine motor, gross motor, problem solving, personal social, and then there's the social emotional piece that's a separate questionnaire.
So these kids could have just really small disabilities.
Right.
That
But
are
we
really
would
not of any great concern, or they could have large ones that will really
Right.
stop them.
Right, but we wouldn't be trying to give any of those kind of diagnoses, what you were talking about. That would either have to come from the pediatrician or from the Department of Health through their evaluation process, or Department of Ed's evaluation process, or a private psychologist, because we're not qualified to give the diagnosis. But that's
Okay,
our
but
stuff.
but you're going to look for impaired functionality of some kind.
Right, in
And you're
those
going to let
5
the pediatrician
areas.
decide what's the cause of it.
Right,
If a kid never goes through your program, right?
right.
And he gets into kindergarten without anybody considering what kinds of impediment he may have, what is likely to happen with him in school? I take a worst case analysis and maybe a best case analysis.
Well, hopefully what will happen if they aren't screened through our program and say they go into kindergarten and the teacher starts noticing situations or concerns, they will have what they call a support team meeting, and they will come together, discuss their concerns. They'll probably look at their examples of their schoolwork and so forth, and they will make a decision if they're going to go forth with a comprehensive evaluation. And the Department of Education would do that. They wouldn't never come, like, sort of refer them back over to our program at that time. But
Right,
hopefully,
right. This is way, I'm just
yeah.
I'm looking at it as a public health matter now.
Right.
Not limited to your project.
Okay.
So somewhere along the line, the part of education in the school setting is going to find this in other ways, you know, as
Right.
the child evolves progresses through school.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean, the idea being, all of this, really, the idea being we want our population to be healthy and be able to learn and, you know, get through school and
Right.
be good citizens.
Right.
Healthy, good citizens. And it's the same thing in a variety school. I can see how they dovetail with you from the other side of the fence.
Right.
But, you know, what happens if the system fails? I mean, is this happening a lot? If I go, for example, to a high school, I'm really interested in your thought about this.
Okay.
If I go to a high school
Okay.
and I take, say, a sophomore class, and I screen them, you know, I mean, who knows? I know they don't do that necessarily, but
Right.
I screen them to see whether these things that you listed or other things like this are present. I mean, am I going to find a substantial number of kids, for example, who have dyslexia? Am I going to find that?
There is a very good possibility you would if they had some kind of screening tool to be able to detect that, because in the end, it is the parent's choice if they want their child to receive the services from the
And
Department of
sometimes
Education.
they may not want that.
Right, and so like dyslexia, there was, like, I have high school friends that had dyslexia in high school. I never knew that. And they really learn how to accommodate themselves. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
So,
And what about, you know, this is really a very important question. I know you're not into it in your zone of the, you know, the age spectrum, but what about emotional problems that kids have? I mean, we
they can
hear about
range.
kids committing suicide in high school.
yes.
We hear about them doing bizarre things.
Oh,
and
there's a wide, that's a wide area when you're looking at emotional problems, because it could be emotional problems from their home life, the way they were brought up, or they could have something like bipolar. And so that's why you would have the psychologists and the psychiatrists that would come in and do their set of evaluations on that child to determine what, what kind of mental health disorder they would have, which is a little different.
We're all different.
Yeah.
You can't straitjacket humanity. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and some of us are not on the right page in terms of dealing with society.
Right.
And who knows how it happened, but there it is. So would you say also, if I asked you, take my high school sophomore class, if I went through them and I screened to see, would I find a lot of kids had emotional issues of one kind or another?
I bet you that would also depend on which school you would go to, but I would think you probably would, especially down in Waianae Coast. And even my job with the Department of the Army, a lot of those kids I had to do when they went to Iraq, and I had to do deployment briefings with those children and provide group therapy and group setting counseling. So, kids, it depends on the tools they have to be able to adapt to those kind of situations, if they understand them, or, if they're sheltered, and, there could be a variety of reasons why a child does not emotionally self-regulate themselves, I guess you could say.
So I mean, it's
Which
very
is really
interesting.
sad.
It is sad, and it's sad to see that there's a relationship between these problems and where you grew up, and that, sociologically where you grew up, and so it becomes very important to get screened and helped at an early age. I mean, another wild idea. Okay, now I'm looking at those kids with emotional problems and dyslexia in the sophomore year of high school. If you screened at the age of 5, if you screen everybody, whether they want to or not, you get to screen them. Would you be able to spot those, the sort of the early stages of those things at the age of 5?
I think you would be able to, yes, because of the questions, where it is a screening tool. However, it would, because you would pick it up.
Okay.
Certain areas,
So if I made you queen.
Okay.
If I made you the school readiness queen.
Okay.
How would you improve the system, change the system, beef up the system? What would you do to make the whole screening program, like more perfect, so that we catch it all? Yeah.
Well, what I would like to see is Department of Education, Department of Health, all at the table together, and come up with a MOU so that we could go in and screen all these kids before they enter, especially before they enter kindergarten. If they could come through our program, maybe before even they register for school, you got kindergarten registration, but then we could identify if there is an area and maybe be able to try to get them on the right track, help the parents. Because a lot of it, I think, is parent education. Some parents just don't introduce kids to certain skills. I've actually conducted a screening, I think it was last Monday, and the kid he did okay. He could draw a circle, but he was holding his pen sort of like this. Yeah. And so I had to tell Mom, you need to try to have him hold the pen like this. And I gave her some ideas for fine motor, putting paper clips together and then taking the paper clips across.
Simple things, but huge effect in later years.
Yeah, and what I've noticed too is pediatricians don't have the time that they used to have with parents. So they get 10 minutes for a well baby check, or 15. They keep reducing the time. That's not enough time to really see if that child is developing on target, where their developmental milestones are at. I remember spending 40 minutes with a pediatrician ready to leave, and he was still talking,
So I'm getting a couple of thoughts here, bounce them off you.
Okay.
Because you're on the fiery line, so to speak, you're right there. Strikes me that the times we live in now are different than the times we lived in, say, 30 years ago.
Yes, you're right.
And the latchkey issue is a big issue for some kids.
Yes.
They don't get to spend that special time with their parents.
Well, no, especially even on the coastline, there's a lot of grandparents raising their kids. Yeah, some of them bounce from school to an after-school program over to, their grandparents, and then one parent picks them up, and they might not see their other parent for 2 or 3 days just because they're working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And then you have the whole homeless population down there. And most of the families that are on the coastline down there are families that actually work and have jobs. They just don't have a roof over their head. So you have that population that we're also trying to target, and that's why we have our mobile screening units. So maybe, we can go by the Waianae boat harbor, and, we got to approach them very carefully, but however, we would like to be able to screen their children so we can help those parents and educate them so they will know what developmental milestones, where their child should be at age 2, 3, 4, and 5, and get them ready for school.
So this is really larger than it seems. I mean, what I get, sorry, I'm really learning a lot with you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Marsha.
Oh, you're welcome.
Is that, take the Waianae Coast. They're homeless.
Yes.
They're latchkey situations there. Those kids aren't getting the same kind of, contact with parents as if they had a home and maybe it wasn't so latchkey. And so they need you. They need this program especially.
Right.
Because there are deficiencies in the social structure that leave us with a greater exposure to these problems.
Right.
And it seems to me, and this is the big one, that if you could solve if the homeless issues, or those latchkey, the social issues that lead to the imperfect time relationships between parents and children, you wouldn't have so much of these problems.
Right.
So we have to do that first. We have to solve the homeless issues first, and then you would be a happy camper, wouldn't you?
I probably would be, because that does bring tears to my eyes to think that these kids, instead of trying to make sure they have reached their developmental milestones and understand that, they're worried about putting, putting food on the table that night, for instance, or whatever their immediate.
Not about showing them how to handle a pencil.
Right.
So it's, oh, wow. We have to fix that, Marsha.
Yes.
Okay, but learning about it is the first step to fixing
Right.
it.
That's true.
Thank you so much for this discussion. I really feel I learned tons with you today.
I know, I feel like I went all over the map with you.
That's the idea, is to
Okay.
sort of, check it out, see what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
That's
you.
Marsha Robinson, a great lady doing great work in Waianae. Waianae Coast School Readiness Project, and she's the project coordinator for that, and that's
Right.
associated with the Learning Disabilities Association of Hawaii.
Right, and we do want to really just thank Aloha United Way again, because without them, we would not be able to do our job.
Indeed, that's why we call it Aloha United We Stand. Indeed we do.
Yes.
Thank you, Marsha.
Thank you.